Hi, welcome to another episode of the CTO-CTO podcast. In today's episode, Piotr speaks to John Wiliams, the CTO at Amplience. This story starts with Amplience being a startup centered around building Flash-based media software right before Steve Jobs announced the death of Flash and the reign of HTML5. John talks about how the company took this seemingly devastating turn of events and made it their biggest market advantage, pivoting into headless content management long before headless became a thing. Amplience currently provides services to over 350 of the world's leading commerce brands and is a proud member of the MACH Alliance. Other topics John and Piotr discuss are headless e-commerce, microservices, API first, and the cloud. Let's begin.
In today's episode, my guest is John Wiliams, CTO of Amplience, enterprise-grade headless content management platform and an experience for e-commerce. He started his career in the late 90s at Reuters. Then he went all the way along from the consulting practice to Amplience. Hi, John. Thank you for accepting my invitation.
No problem. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. John, do you remember your first computer and how you got into software engineering?
Yeah, sure. When I was a child, about 11 years old, I was given a ZX81. So most of your listeners won't know what that is, but it looked something like a calculator that you plugged into a monitor, ended up with a black and white display, and you had the whole of 1K. And that was my first computer, and my father at the time said I couldn't use it for games, not that you could get very good games on there, so I decided to write them myself. Then all the way through having that, and then I had a Dragon 32, which had 32K, which is a huge amount of memory. And then, awesome. From that, I started writing games when I was very young.
Was it BASIC?
Yeah,
the first language?
Combination of BASIC and a little bit of machine code. There was obviously no internet back then, and I had to do a lot of learning using the manual and magazines. So standing in shops, reading magazines, looking how other people coded programs and games. And I had my first programs published when I was 11, and then a whole bunch of them when I was 13. So I was earning money at a very early age writing games.
On the apps you were doing, right?
Yeah. They were kind of send them to a magazine, they print them out, and some of the guys will remember those days of sitting there with a magazine, typing out your computer programs into your machine, and then wondering why it didn't work. I was one of those people that would write those things, and that was back in the day.
Awesome, great story. Actually, your professional career started at Reuters in the late 90s, right? Do you remember your first project then?
Yeah, so I kind of left university, moved to London from Middlesbrough, my hometown. I had to do that because at the time there weren't really any digital businesses out there in the Northeast.
Yeah.
And it's changing now. We have our own office out in Middlesbrough. And a bunch of us are out there right now to help really sort of, build up that tech talent over there. So
by the way, I had an interview with Adam Sturak from Moltin a few weeks ago.
Yeah, no, I don't.
So I guess he started somewhere near your hometown, right?
That's right.
Northern England.
Yeah, in the northeast of England. Yeah, Adam's from the same sort of place. So we built a team out there mainly because when I was out there, I knew there was lots of great talent and tech in the northeast, but I had to come to London, so which is not a bad thing. I quite like London; it's great. And I started started my first job in Reuters. It was C++. Visual C++. Visual C++, lots of Windows programs.
So Windows apps.
Yeah, pure Windows apps. It took like a week to just do one screen. It was incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
With a big Oracle sort of database as a back end.
It was actually how my career started too, like MFC, Visual, C++, Windows. So that's absolutely. I remember those times.
Yeah, so I was coding out that. I was a junior programmer. I learned a huge amount around just general coding principles straight out of uni. You have the basics, but there's so much more to learn. And I worked with a really cool team out there. It's one of the best times of my life, actually. As a young person over in London, writing some really cool stuff. It was a internal product as well, called it's a data feed management system. So it was all about tiered billing for Reuters customers at the time. And so it was quite sophisticated. It was not project based. It was like kind of it was more of a product based thing. So it was my kind of first ever entry into working on a product. And I got to learn things like support, implementation, as well as doing the development and get involved with QA and things like that. So it was a great grounding for a career.
Interesting. So you started as in a kind of product organization, maybe not product company, because Reuters is absolutely not a product company, but you were doing some products. But then your career path pivoted a little bit. I mean, you got into head software engineering roles at IXL and then LBI.
Yes.
Tell us more about it.
Yeah, so one of my friends, we met up, and I was talking with him, and his girlfriend actually worked in IXL at the time, and they were looking. It was a .com boom, so people were desperate for developers at the time. So I kind of got to the point where 3.5 years in Reuters, I was getting to the point of I had to go into project management, but I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to continue to be a technologist, continue to develop. And this seemed like a great thing to do. The internet was just really starting to emerge at that point. It was people throwing money at it. There was so much to learn. It felt really exciting. So I moved to IXL at the time, and it was fantastic. There was a huge amount of energy. It had a culture of more of a meritocracy type culture. So if you worked hard, you progressed. We learned lots of great things. It was really diverse and huge amounts and varieties of work. And I worked on my first ever web, sort of Java web project. And it was a B2B, B2C marketplace, one of the first of that. And I was using ATG, big scale Java development. Yeah. It was fantastic. A real change. Moved from kind of a pristine office in Reuters to an office that actually in the same office we're in today, funny enough, same building. We're in the same building as I was my first job at IXL. But it was a bit tired when we moved in, the office itself. So it felt like a real cultural shift. But I've met some fantastic people out there. I learned so much around user experience and design, and how it's more than just the technology, and it's more about developing experiences for customers as well as actually embedding in the technology. So
fair point. You said that the culture was different, the organization was bigger. It sounds like you learned a lot. You mean this user experience? So is this the biggest takeaway you got from this experience that led you to Amplience and building content management platforms, or
no? I mean,
maybe you remember something more like?
So IXL was the starting point, but I was there for about a year and a half, and we're starting to hit the .com bust. And that was a really challenging time for many of us in the industry. I had to make, at that point, I progressed to a head of technology. And we're at the point of making very difficult decisions about who was staying in the company because of the .com bust. It was like, there wasn't
scaling
more, scaling.
Never easy.
Not an easy decision to make. So we went through that. And then at the back of that, we went, obviously it all changed around eventually. And then we had to build the team again. So, I learned a huge amount about keeping a core team, trying to keep motivated, focusing on the right things in the business to keep the business going, and it all felt like we're all a part of it. In many ways, I guess there's a lot of people out there right now feeling the same way about what's going on with the current pandemic. It had that kind of feel about it. But then we built, we came out the back of that. We built this fantastic company at the end. We went through lots of mergers and acquisitions, so I learned lots about dealing with that. I think I had actually probably 5 different company names, and I sat in the same desk. Met lots of people from lots of cultures and companies and joined them together.
So you learned a lot about this serious business, right?
Yeah.
But the mergers and acquisitions.
The other thing is you've got to deal with a huge amount of different technologies. So it was kind of very horizontal with both sectors.
Gotcha.
So e-commerce, pharma, CPG, financial services, as well as content management, etc. Every system, search, every single system, and every platform from .NET in the Microsoft world over to Java. So you've got this kind of real understanding of architecture and breadth of technology.
It's good that you said that, because actually that's my observation too. I mean, like, I was in services for more than 10 years, building Devante from ground up, and the single biggest thing, there is no single learning, but if I'm to name one single thing, is the diversity of things you were doing at a services-based company. Like, technology changes, people changes, processes change, everything changes, and you have a great experience going through all those. And so then starting building a product I think is easier after all.
It has.
Do you agree?
Yeah, in some ways, because I used to say in agency, you'd get really involved in a project and it became like your thing and you'd work incredible hours to deliver it.
Absolutely.
And then you kind of run away, right? You kind of like, you have to let it go and move on to the next one, or you might be working on 3 at the same time. And it's great for a while because you get to have all this breadth of experience. But it's quite demanding because each time you've got a brand new set of requirements, brand new sector, new technology you've never heard of before, and you've got to kind of wire a lot of it all together, new challenges, different people on the team because it's agency or consultancy, so you're moving people. So you've got all of these teams are changing, all the technology's changing. So it can be quite demanding and quite wearing. And so building product is easier in that respect, as in, you can really focus and you can go much more vertical in terms of your thinking.
Gotcha.
But it's challenging in different ways, I think. It can be very challenging in different ways. Things like...
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a set of totally different challenges.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing in your career was Amplience. I guess it's a huge milestone because you are still... at the company. How did it look like those days when you joined?
Yeah, so actually we were called 10CMS right at the beginning, and we changed our name in the middle.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, so when I joined 10CMS, I actually joined with one of my friends, James Brook, who was one of the client partners in LBI. He went on and set up this kind of business, asked me to come join him. I was at that point where finished an MBA, thought, I want to do something different. I've been there for 10 years in LBI and fancied a new challenge. Really like the thought of working in product as going over to the other side of the fence. And I joined, and actually it was a very, very young company, only about, I think, 9 or 10 people. It was really transitioning from a more services type company because they had a nice SDK that could basically make media transactional for retailers. And at the time they were looking to move that into more of a product model. So they're building a portal, building tooling around it, that kind of thing. It was Flash based, right? So, which is
Flash. Yeah.
Why would you do that? I don't know, but it looked really good, and it was the only technology you could really do the kinds of things with media that they wanted.
Absolutely, it was actually one of the one of the only options you had back then for multimedia processing.
So it was called interactive merchandising, the product that we built. And it was amazing. You could take video and images, put hotspots on it, link them onto products. We made it so you could literally install it as if you were installing a YouTube player. Spent a lot of time in the performance in the browser. It was really well crafted once we got to the end of it, and we had this great portal. We had a lot of customers coming onto that because I could see the value in it straight away in terms of conversion and and sales in e-commerce. But then we had Steve Jobs come along with I think it was his iPad at the time, and decided that Flash was dead and that HTML5 was the new thing. And this is probably 6 or 7 months in, and I'm like, oh my God, I just joined the company and the core tech is Flash. And now
game changer.
Now we've got to do something else, right? Because it's hard because everybody's so ingrained into Flash. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The end isn't now, but it was, right. We had to make that change. So got the team together, and my current head of sort of VP of technology that is still in my team today, Darren Lee, and I actually sat in a cupboard basically for about a week trying to work out how we transform this from a Flash player to a HTML5 player, and we actually did it. We worked out a strategy for it. We followed an agile kind of lean route. We just made lots and lots of iterations around this player, and actually we came up with a fantastic proposition, which was depending on what browser you had, it would switch the actual player that you got. Because the other challenge you had is that everyone's saying do HTML5 didn't really exist. It was just a kind of made up standard at that time. And different browsers implemented things in lots of different ways. So it was quite tricky. But what we did is we created this new product that allowed you to have the same experience, same fidelity experience, and it would swap out the players depending on what you were. So that was.
I'm just curious, Steve is going on the stage saying something more or less like Flash is dead. I remember this keynote. It was like, but actually it wasn't that clear afterwards that it's immediately dead, and you needed to make this decision. Yeah, I'm wondering when were you sure that you need to rewrite the whole product?
The statement.
How you made this decision? Because it's a very tough decision, right?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately we're sitting within an environment not by ourselves, right? So we have customers already out there. We're already dealing with business development. We see the kind of announcements. You kind of see the industry news as a business. There was basically not that many of us, but we were talking about this all the time. And there were parts of the business, I guess, which were quite reluctant because they were like, "No, it's not dead because this is our life.
Absolutely
doing this, right?" Yeah. I was lucky in some respects being fairly new, because I was objective. I was like, "Look, looks like the writing's on the wall. It's a challenge, but this is a challenge for the whole industry. So let's just take on that challenge and solve it. Because if we solve that, then nobody else is doing that." And we kind of had the answer, and we just need to change the mindset about things. But on top of that, we have customers and then business development. They're asking those questions. Wait a minute, you're Flash. Steve Jobs yesterday said it's dead. So why would we use Flash?
Gotcha.
So you get the messages from the market, from the customers, as well as internally within your own team. So it's every decision that you make when you're a startup should really be made from feedback from customers and potential customers.
Absolutely. That's even a sentence we can quote. It's a perfect fit to the startup situation. Do you feel like a pioneer?
It's a kind of yes and no answer, right? So I guess if we think about when we were all the way back then, we changed, we sort of changed the tech. Didn't see that as pioneering at the time. We just needed to kind of do some. But then I think in the industry, I think everybody in some respects has to be a pioneer, because if there's one constant, it's change. All the way through, everything that I've done for the last 10 years has been to do with change, and it's still happening today. So we had that initial kind of technology stack change, and then we have this player that's amazing. People are loving it. It's actually gaining huge amounts of traction. Everyone in the business is excited by it. Then we have mobile, tablet, omni-channel, responsive design, fluid design, adaptive design. All of these things start cropping in. And when you've got a product that takes media and builds stuff around it, it tends to be very canvas based. It's not meant to work on a mobile, right? It's not mobile first.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, again, actually, I talked to James, and that was a much more discussion, because you're basically going, I think the business is not going to continue down this path if we stay with just a player and being canvas. What I thought was important was the content, not the delivery. And actually,
Gotcha.
James and I actually, we talked about it. We did lots of deep investigation with customers out in the business, and we both came to the same conclusion. And in fact, the whole team, we're all around this idea that actually what's important is the content, right? And content should be delivered as a service.
Yes.
And we had a customer day one talk about this and say, yeah, this is really important to us. We'd like to think about it. So we've actually moved to content as a service. We had a couple of things.
Gotcha.
We had a couple of things along the way, like we built a dynamic imaging service, which had to be hugely scalable and performant, and we had to build a DAM before that as well, which was all API first.
You mean the service optimizing the media for the device, right?
Yeah. So as a part of doing IM, the interactive media piece, we decided to take responsibility of the media as well. Mm-hmm. So we started delivering the images and the media, the pictures, the images and the video dynamically. But what that meant was that we would change the size and orientation, the cropping, and all sorts of things completely on the fly in the service before it was delivered to the browser. And there was already a vendor out there that did that, and they were doing it at huge scale, big SLA. So we had to kind of do that already. So by taking on that piece of work and delivering those kinds of high volume, high scale services, and then looking at content, it seemed to me a natural extension that we'd also deliver content in a similar way, huge performance and at high volume and high scale, and worry less about the presentation, because that doesn't exist anymore. Like, what is the presentation? Is it is it going to be in a browser? Is it going to be a native app? Is it going to be email? Is it going to be voice? Is it going to be in a React app now, or a Vue app, or is it going to be augmented reality or some other thing? Right? I mean, you just don't know anymore. So we made that leap to build content as content as service, which now we know as headless CMS. And
that was my next question. Actually, that was the way you came across the headless, because thanks for this long answer. I think that you clearly were pioneering this stuff, and what you just said, that the content is much more important than the presentation layer is a key to understand how the apps are and will be built, in the next years. Absolutely, this is going on. You did it long before all the other, vendors, and that's funny because you said about this Canvas approach where you just render the content as it was on Canvas, and actually some of the CMSs on the market still are not, that are blind for the other devices than the desktop web, which is crazy those days. You mentioned headless, so that's the way you came across it, like this general trend of building headless apps.
Yeah, so we went down the path of at the time we were calling content as service because there wasn't really any other way of describing it, and then headless as a concept started to emerge in the industry. So then we talked about headless CMS, and we kind of made that switch. And we still, for a while, we still had our old product and our new product at the same time, and we've had two versions of it. So we started because we already had everything as a service. We thought actually content is just an extension for what we already do. And we basically embedded our original sort of headless CMS implementation within the services that we already provided as a part of dynamic media and the what we call the Content Hub, the DAM side of things, right? Yeah. It's all API first, and it's just another form of API. But what we realized actually was another leap. And I think this is important in terms of understanding pivoting and being agile, is that you kind of need to reflect sometimes and look at how you're doing things. And if it's not kind of 100% working, you need to step back and make some brave decisions about moving forward. So we talked to one of our big major customers. I don't really want to mention on here, but a big major enterprise customer about, they were excited about content as a service, and we talked to them about it, and it just wasn't working for them. There was something about what we're doing wasn't working. It was working.
What do you mean it wasn't working for him? I'm wondering, what does it mean that?
Yeah, so it was basically, we had a service running and lots of customers were using it, but this was a really giant enterprise customer, and they were saying there was just some essence that didn't fit everything they want. And if there's one thing that James will tell you over and over again, if you're delivering products, you've got to deliver a whole product. You can't deliver most of a product. You've got to deliver a product. And there was obviously something kind of missing out of there. So I went out there with some of my team, and we ran a bit, and these guys wanted co-development, right? So they were very open. We have really good customer relations with them. And we went out, talked to them, and over a couple of weeks, I pulled together a strategy around, well, I think regardless of our own product, how it should work. Drew it up on. I got my designers to draw the comps up. We put them on a board. Walked it through with them, and I went, that's how it needs to work. And what we found was, rather than focus on the tech part of things, it was the tooling. And there were things that were fundamental for e-commerce and enterprise businesses, like their day-to-day. How did they run as business users? How did they do things? So we came out with concepts like a calendar for the content, so they could schedule the content.
Content staging, something like this.
Yeah. Well, it's even better than that. It's like they literally want to able to slice and dice through the content at different moments in time and different variants. Because they have these walk the wall principles where they put out, say, Black Friday for every day, and they'll walk around and see what the design's like. They want to be able to do that, but in the tool. So we came out with this calendar concept. At the time, we were integrating with e-commerce as opposed to driving it, the whole experience. So we needed a way of them understanding where this exists in their e-commerce system, in their pages. So we came up with a slot mechanism so they could deliver content into slots. And then we did a whole bunch of things around how to organize the content in the platform to make it easy for business users. When I looked at it, and I worked with my tech team, and everyone agreed this is the right direction, we realized that the actual way that we were implementing it with the current platform wouldn't really deal with the way that we want to do it here. And actually, we distilled it down to some very simple principle, which was we built a platform which was about high performance and low complexity, right? We literally ingest 10 million images from a retailer, put them into our DAM system, our content hub, and then deliver them out the other side, and then deliver thousands of variants of that image on the fly every day, right? That's what we built. This is different, right? People are not putting tens of millions of pieces of content into a system and then manipulating it, right? They're actually typing it in and creating it, copy and pasting, all that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
So and it has to be more complex. So what we did, actually, it's quite a brave move. We put a big investment. We took all the work that we'd already done with the content side, and we moved it into a brand new technical stack that was designed for much more complexity around how we deal with content. And took some of the concepts we started, like content as a graph. So basically having the model of the content in the system as a graph, not in a database. Using standards like JSON schema to define the content model. And then on top of that, obviously all API first, headless APIs. We built a front end on top of that, which did what the users needed it to do for their business. So content calendars, the ability for them to see different variants of content, move them around, put them into slots, preview them, which is we had to that's one of the big innovations we did, which was I said to the team, the problem with CMS, right, in the old world was you never had enough environments, right? I don't know if you can remember this, but you'd had your stage environment and the live environment support, and then someone wants to do something, you need another environment. And that's just not sustainable in a multi-tenanted environment.
Yeah, it's a hell.
Yeah. So I said to the guys, we need to turn it on its head. We need to deliver staging as an API. And we came out this fantastic way that we can basically create a virtual staging environment based on the existing content we have in the system based on time and a bunch of other dimensions. And all you have to do as a developer is just change the domain name. So ultimately you have every developer gets their own kind of staging environment, right? And it dynamically creates staging environment endpoints on the fly, so you can see your content in context. And you don't have to do anything fancy. You just literally change the domain name. So that was a huge innovation.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. I really like it. You said it again. I'm not sure if you realized, but you said again that every decision you were doing for the product was based on the feedback from customers and some business needs. You started with the tooling, and that's absolutely great for me because my job is interviewing CTOs, not only CTOs, but but CTOs as well, as the name suggests. And it's not that often the CTOs are so customer driven as you. I really like it. I think it's a recipe for success for removing the conflict, from the whole story, because the stories I hear here as doing the interviews is very often about the conflict, like business needs versus architecture, business needs versus tech stack, business needs versus development cycle, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And you are saying something like, we don't have this conflict because we start with business needs, and then everything is pretty clear.
Yeah, and it goes through the team. I mean, a lot of my team, if someone comes with a solution, which is ironically a business person might come with a solution, we go, no. What does the business actually need? What are the requirements?
Absolutely,
and I think it's not just us. I think it's the new way of developing, right? It's this product-oriented rather than project-oriented way of development, right? It's that whole thing around multidisciplinary teams, having product owners take on the side of the business, but they're not separate from the developers. They're all part of the same thing. And we did that with the development of the latest, which is now 3 years old, the latest part of the headless content management. We actually worked, I think I can mention actually, we actually worked with Crate and Barrel in the US, and we spent probably 9 months in their office, not just in their office, but like going backwards and forwards to their office, working with them day to day, like the business users, the people who really
how they use it, right?
Yeah. And we got such a great relationship. We were literally at the point where in any technology delivery, you'll always end up with not enough time and more stuff you want to do, right? But we're literally with the customers going, well, here's the 10 things that we're left to do. Would you rather have this or this? And we kind of started literally prioritizing the final stages of dev with the customers, and them feeding back in and telling us things that we would have never imagined, because like we're not going to be using it every day in the way they do. And so that's how we started the initial part of this dynamic content system that we've created. And because it's got the users embedded in there, the tooling is really rich and it flows well with the business users. And we did the first release, and we've done like hundreds of releases since then, because we release every week. But every release, it tends to be based on an alignment with customers, some customer. And it makes a huge difference, because it means that when you build stuff, you have much more confidence about what you're delivering, because you know that it's actually going to meet a need. It's a real problem, not just something you think is a problem. And it's easier to articulate as well. So although I'm not a salesperson, but we all have to do our bit, it's much more easier to articulate to everybody else the reason why you built something, if you built it as a part of working with a customer, right? Not because you thought you thought it was cool.
It makes everything much easier, and it's like it makes easier doing the decisions, but at the same time it's making it much tougher, because you need to have this listening skills, right?
Yeah,
to actually discuss with the customer.
Yeah, I guess I guess that's one of the things you learn working in consultancy and agency, right? Which is to
absolutely
listen a lot more than you speak when you're in there.
Absolutely, and I see this very often on the other verge of at the products company, that they are not that good listening. They are very good, telling around why the product is so great. That makes perfect sense now. Okay, you told us a lot about the product, which is great. Thank you for that. I'm really excited, and I really like this feature of dynamic environments and other stuff. That's absolutely something worth testing out. Let's talk about the ecosystem a little bit, because in nowadays headless architecture, none of the systems building up the whole puzzle can work on their own. Is no longer times of all-inclusive platforms where you have every little feature included. So you must cooperate, I guess, with different platforms, different CRMs, OMS, front ends, maybe. Like, what are the other players in this ecosystem that you find the best synergies with?
Yeah, we've got an OEM actually already with Algolia for search, because they're very sympathetic in terms of their architecture and how they work with our product. They are kind of in the MACH Alliance. They're pure kind of headless API first. I spent a lot of time in search, using Endeca in the day that ended up at Oracle, and did a huge amount of work around there. And actually, it's really refreshing to now see something like Algolia, for instance, come up with a great search engine, but in that kind of headless wrapper. Commerce Tools is the other one that we spend a huge amount of time with in ecom. I mean, they are just they are the spearhead of driving sort of headless commerce, and love working with those guys because they for same sort of reasons. I just started working with another company called Personify and it's took me a huge amount of time to find a sort of personalization sort of vendor, that kind of thing.
It's marketing automation kind of, or recommendation?
It's like personalization recommendations.
Okay.
But it's started as one of the new breed. It's got it's fully headless APIs, very new. We just started working with them, and that was quite refreshing. Mobify as well came along. We worked with those guys for delivering into a kind of presentation almost as a service. And Frontastic is another one we've kind of done. And then some of the bigger players are also hitting on this kind of wave now, right? As well, they're making all of their systems kind of API first and headless. Taking a little bit of time to get there, but they're kind of there. I think I know that one of the things you're interested in about the MACH Alliance. I think one of the things that's important is that there's more than just being headless in this world. It's also being pure cloud API first. As well as headless, right? I think the big challenge that we have in the industry right now is what I would call, or what's being called, cloud washing, where you basically you basically take some old legacy, sort of monolithic platform, you wrap it up in a bunch of APIs, stick it, put some automated DevOps around it, get it into a cloud, some sort of cloud environment, and now you call it like a headless system, right? But you still have to, it's not multi-tenanted, it's not dealt with the right way. You still might take 3 months to do an upgrade. Upgrade.
Absolutely. That's actually the topic I discussed with Kelly Gage from Commerce Tools in the first episode of this podcast. We discussed the let's call them pretenders, so monolith systems playing the role of playing that they are actually headless or API first. Absolutely they are not. They are maybe API second, if there is something like that, but not API first. I actually, that was my second question why MACH Alliance is important initiative. What was your thought on that?
I think for the key things about the MACH Alliance is it provides an organization that gives you those standards, right? It defines
standardization. Yeah.
It also defines what it is. So you can kind of start to understand what are the best of breed players in this space. So if you're in the MACH Alliance and a customer goes and uses your platform, they know what they're in for, right? They know that it's so it is going to be multi-tenanted API, cloud, all that kind of stuff. It knows what they know what they're getting. If it's not in the MACH Alliance, then it may be. It doesn't mean it's not going to be, right? It just might not have got round to it yet. But you understand. You know what you're getting, right? There's a kind of, there's a bunch of us on the Tech Council that spend some time looking at the technology and making those decisions around the standards of what comes in. I think the other thing is around education, because this is fairly new in terms of architecture, and no one has really got a sort of fully fledged blueprint of how to do everything using headless technologies, right? So
and I guess the merchants are also still expecting that there is one single platform doing everything for you. And it's no longer true. Like, okay, there are still those kind of platforms, but I haven't seen any new piece of software, new product built that way. Absolutely not how things work.
And it can and we're already seeing more and more marketing or high level, I call it marketing, but it's actually just high level concepting around this, around what headless is in terms of a business side of things. And it's useful to have an organization that, where we meet up and we talk about these things. So the latest one is like Composable Commerce, for instance. What does that really mean? Because it's not technology based. It's a concept, right? So it's quite easy to be bent out of shape, and you could actually be composable commerce, but it's still using old sort of technology. So what we do in kind of MACH Alliance and as headless vendors and providing all these microservices, we enable that kind of composable architecture. But it doesn't necessarily stop with us. And I think having a body that is kind of independent and it kind of has those standards, it helps you understand from a technical point of view rather than a industry business level point of view. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think that the education of the market is at this point of time, I think it's very important. Like, after all, it's all about the technology adoption life cycle. And still didn't change from this, crossing the chasm book. It's still the same.
We follow that a lot.
Absolutely. Like, you must follow it because it's how the software world works, and it's not changing like the general principles. So I think it's like you need 5-10 years to have some ideas from early adopters. I think this is the stage we are now, like early adopters, maybe slightly crossing this cusp to majority, but it's still not yet there. I think it's still a few years from there.
I mean, most of our deals that we see now coming through, I think about 80% are pure headless, whereas a couple of years ago it would be like 20%. So it's interesting because if you draw like a high level architecture diagram, previously you would see kind of e-commerce owning like kind of sort of more of a vertical space all the way from the bottom all the way up to the presentation layer, and then people would plug into it, particularly content, anything that's delivering content. That's kind of changing now because everything's services. It's kind of everyone's at the same level almost, and then you got the presentation on the top.
Do you think it's also changing who's making the decisions? Because I think that it's changing all the way the e-commerce is growing. Like the few years ago, maybe even now, a few years ago, the only decision makers for choosing the software for e-commerce were marketing officers. Chief marketing officers, sometimes CSO, chief sales officers. But I think that from like maybe 2-3 years, 2-3 years on, the bigger company, the more they put on software, like the accents. So they have digital officers, they have more powerful CTOs.
Yeah.
Do you see this is happening? Because I think that this change, like you say, 80% licenses are pure headless architecture. The decision must be made by CTOs. I can't believe that marketing persons are using the architecture. It's not happening.
Yeah, the CDO tends to be much more tech heavy, and actually
absolutely.
e-commerce directors in the past have been quite tech heavy. I think what had happened is that, when I was back in LBI and we're doing it was still quite heavily on the CIO-CTO kind of space, right? And we had this constant cycle where agencies decided to make money out of replatforming, right? You'd basically spend ages building something, have a really rich platform, then you'd kind of replace it with something else but not have as much features. Yeah. And then it would eventually get back to being a proper monolith again, and then you would go through the iteration. I think that what had happened is that the speed in which you had to make change in any business, particularly in e-commerce, had accelerated. And
absolutely, yes.
The technology kind of recommendations are out there always used to take 6 to 12 to 18 months, right, to kind of form. So then there was lots of technologies like we started out where you could basically implement very quickly and get some value out and deliver what the business wants to deliver. So then it became a marketing function. It's like, no, we've got control of this now. We can kind of do it. And we just plug into the e-commerce platform. We won't even touch that because it's not worth it. It takes too long. So they would just hold that budget to kind of deliver. But now things are kind of radically changing with all of the omnichannel, kind of all the various devices, etc. And they need even more agility than just changing a bit of content here and a bit of content there. They need fundamental change, and they need to make it very, very quickly, right? Especially now. And the technology has moved on, right? So we have headless and we have services. And you can do that. You don't even need an army of IT people anymore in your organization.
Absolutely.
Right?
Because it's separating, right? Yeah. The hardcore IT, the backend systems are now separated from the front end where you can experiment and do things more quickly.
And the key thing about this is that if you're in that business, you should be focusing on differentiating your business. That's the key part of your business that you want to differentiate on, which is delivering value,
user experience,
value to the customers. Not are my servers ticking okay, and how much did that data center cost, right? I mean, that is just like, you shouldn't do that. I've worked in consultancy dealing with people that had like more people in their managing their back-end systems, and I have developers, right? It's like now. So I think that's the difference, right? Is that with SaaS, headless, API first, Microsoft, the MACH type architectures, you can kind of move where the value is and focus on. And again, focus on the customers, focus on the business value, and enabling technologies as apart from, that whole kind of drag of dealing with monoliths and proprietary tech.
There is also this, whole discussion what puzzles you need to own versus just buy on the market. I mean, exactly as you said, like most times I see new project going on, e-commerce project, the folks are willing to own and maintain the user experience, the front end, what makes the conversion rates, makes the user proposition, and the backend system need to just work. They now provide us as software as a service, so it's fairly easy to have it up and running. But also, it's related to another topic I like to hear your opinion on, which is commoditization. I mean, you just said about the replatforming, and absolutely, it was like when we started Devante in 2008, then 2011, 12 going on, Magento position was growing up, and Salesforce was very strong back then. We saw a lot of opportunities, and actually most of them new projects were opportunities where you were where you were just starting to some tender process for replatforming something. Yeah. We had already ATG, now we are doing Salesforce. We had Salesforce, and now we are doing Magento.
Yeah.
And after Magento, we are doing, you name it, right? Yeah. And I think that this is no longer an issue with the headless, because you have these APIs. It's like electric outlets. The power is there. You can connect anything you like. It just works. But on the other hand, what's the value of this product? Like, you have 10 CMSs, 10 e-commerce platforms, all have pretty cool API. So I think the struggle to win the client as a vendor is probably even more tougher right now. But then when you are in, even there is no vendor lock-in, it's pretty difficult to change it, because there is absolutely no motivation for changing it. How you see this?
Yeah, so if you look at it purely as an API level thing, you could quite easily say, yeah, it's commoditization, right?
Yeah.
It's like, who's got the cheapest API? But actually, what you deliver out of that API and how you use the things that are in that API is what's really important, right? It goes back down again to the customer. So, we've got like some amazingly fast, scalable APIs. We did like 1.5 trillion requests or something last year on our system. Huge amount, right? So you could say that looks like, if you divide that up, maybe you could commoditize it. But what's really important is how the business is going to use the platform, right? How do they do that to get it into the API? So you got to really understand the business problems of the business user. What's their day-to-day going to be like? How do they kind of pull all the content together, organize it, and then finally deliver it into that API? And then when you consume that API, what are the things that are in it? That you can use to drive the experience? That's what we've kind of done. We started off, I guess, way back as content is a service, so therefore it's an asset, just the same as an image. But now we're looking at actually content is part of the experience. And we're particularly from our side of things, we're finding that customers are coming to us now going, well, you're the CMS, so what you should be helping us with the experience, which we've been doing over the last year around more added value services, sort of content services to help you do that. And I think that's what it is. If you stick in the same place and you don't change, then you get commoditized, right? The only way that things change, the way that things don't commoditize, is when you're constantly helping customers add that value to what they're trying to do, whether it's at the back end around content,
Fair point.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about it, personalization's been out there since I started in the industry, right? You've probably heard it 1 billion times yourself, right? And it's only now that we're probably getting to some place where you can do it. But the big problem is that even if they're the best personalization system in the world, how do you get enough content into it in the first place, right? So that opens up a whole new set of criteria. How do you build a backend system that can create so many variants of content, for instance? And then how do you create it? So now you've got only APIs, right? And you're going to create this amazing user experience. How do you manage it? Who's managing it? How does the business user manage, I don't know, what the organization of a menu system is, where something sits in a page?
Absolutely. Like getting into the business processes with the admin panel, with the management console, with all those toolings is a way. I think it's a way to become relevant, to stay relevant. Because on the other hand, on this experience level, like I heard this many times that we need to change this Magento because we need better front end. We are redoing the UX, so it's a chance to replatform. Yeah. And by the way, we struggle with this and this and that. So we have good reason for business stakeholders to give us money, like better conversion rates, to change the whole stack. And currently, there is no such a reason. And if you fulfill the business needs for the merchandisers and visual content editors, you are in the game.
Yeah,
and no reason to change your system.
And I think it goes well beyond what we think what we've been thinking about already around the platform, right? There is no reason why a business user can't change elements on the product details page that have always been locked in because a developer made it like that because it came through some business process and it's how the e-commerce platform did it or whatever, right? They should be able to change things on that and A/B test it and see if it's better or change it based on different segments. If you're really interested in the product, maybe you want more information. If you're just ready to buy it, you just want to know what's the cheapest price you can get. I don't know, right? There are things that you need to do in the user experience at all different parts of the experience. The basket, is it better to have more information, bigger thumbnails, or just a summary? Checkout process, right? I mean, there's another fundamental thing. If you look at mobile conversion and look at how much traffic's on there, more traffic's going in the mobile channel and the conversion rates are much lower. Right, but actually, if you look at the stats, you'll find that adding stuff to basket in mobile is actually the same pretty much as what it is on desktop. So so therefore there must be something that's not right in the experience between that and then the other parts of the system. But do you have the tools that enable you to actually change that user experience right now? Even if it's headless, right? You've got the APIs to deliver a basket, you've got APIs to do everything else. But the experience in a lot of cases has been encoded by the developers in some Vue or React components. And I think that, for me, that's one of the visions that I have, which is the ability to free users to actually manage all elements of the experience, because everything ultimately is just the API. And if you have the right things in the API, then the developers can use that to make things much more flexible.
Good, you are saying that, and also you just said before that to stay relevant, you need to keep up the pace with the changes. And actually, that's my next question. It's more general than just headless or product. It's more like, how do you stay up with the new tech trends?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm fortunate that I have a great team that are also doing that, and we have, and we're very open with each other. We have lots of chats, and so you're getting all these things from an existing team. I think when you're out in the business, in both business development, working with customers, you find things that are going on around there, right? So, I mean, the most important thing is again to listen to what customers are doing. Having a good network also helps. So having friends that are not necessarily even in your industry either, but are in other industries really helps, because there are things going on in other areas that may be further ahead than they are in where you're at right now. So if you're purely in e-commerce, you might find the things going on in financial services that you didn't know about that are quite important, and vice versa. And I do a huge amount of reading and listening. Things like that, right? It's all...
anything to recommend from your latest readings?
My latest readings. I actually have this app that I've been using called Blinklist, which gives me. I don't know if you guys use it, but it gives me a summary of all the latest books that are out there, and then I kind of...
It's like 15-20 minutes summary of any book.
And then when I do I've been doing, because of COVID, I've been going out trying to do runs and long walks and stuff to get out the house. You stick that on, and then you hear any interesting books or things that might be important, then I download them and listen to them.
Awesome.
And I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn seeing what people have got to say.
Awesome. Okay. My last question is, what are the most over and under hype technology trends right now?
Yeah, I was thinking about this for a while, actually. I think one of the most overhyped ones is the ones around AI and ML. I get forced on, I don't know how many discussions around AI and ML, and people, and you turn up to a meeting and everyone says they've got some, and it half the time it's not really AI, it's some rules-based system that looks like it's AI, or it's just like some standard kind of thing like we use image recognition, which is the Amazon one, allows us to auto tag everything. which is kind of AI, I guess. But is it really the kind of things that people are that aspire to? No, I think it's overhyped. I think there's a lot, how many times do you talk to recommendations and personalization engines that the first thing they say is AI, and then you ask them about it and they don't know?
Everyone, every one of them is AI based.
Yeah, we're looking at stuff around that of, how do we take our graph and take the semantics around it, and then how do we then take all of the data that we have for it and allow us to synthesize content dynamically and recommend it to customers so they can do their job more efficiently. Yep. That's kind of the thing that I would see as real AI, but like doing some, natural language processing, even though it's not, it's kind of, as you were saying earlier, it's kind of a commoditized piece, right? So I think for me, that's kind of an overhyped thing. And it feels like it's overhyped because you need, from a business point of view, whether it's investment or customers or analysts or someone else, they're looking for that AI box to tick. So everyone feels compelled to tick the box. Yeah. And then in doing it, it dilutes the whole principle about what it is, I think. So it then becomes very overhyped.
Gotcha. Makes perfect sense.
And underhyped, I would say that...
that's even more interesting.
Yeah. Well, the interesting is we've been using this concept for a while, and people, I think, as a technologist, you'll know about it. Webhooks. It sounds dull, right? But actually, what it's a way in which you can pick up an event in a system and directly pipe it to another API. And
that's brilliant, especially when you have serverless capabilities right now.
Yeah.
And the way, for example, commerce tools let you extend their API or admin panel is just based on that. I really like it. It's awesome.
I mean, we've been using it for a while, and we spent a lot of time investing behind it. We've added things like handlebars templates, and they're very basic, to our payload, so you can dynamically change the payload in the webhook. Using just a standard language like webhook, so you can then all of the configuration options around it. So you need far less middleware to join one API with another API, and it opens up the system. You can literally take anything in a system, whether it's a content management, whether it's e-commerce, whether it doesn't matter what it is, right? You can open up that system, connect into events that are in that system, and then join it to other pieces. Right, I think it's an amazing piece of technology. It's been fundamental in a lot of the integration patterns that we've been doing, and no one really talks. If I put it on a presentation at a pitch, or if I talk about it in a with other peers and think, people just don't really. I don't know if they don't understand it, or it's one of those things that are incredibly powerful that doesn't get the kind of airtime as say AI, because it sounds really sexy and you think of robots running around.
Yeah. That's cool. Okay, John, it was amazing. Amazing talk. I had a great fun talking with you. Thank you for your time and for your preparation and everything.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the CTO-CTO podcast. Make sure you hit subscribe and also check out our new YouTube channel where we've prepared some surprises for you. See you next week.